Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
Welcome to this edition of Helping Seniors Television. I'm Kerry Fink. And it is a pleasure to have you join us on behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder. This is the program that's designed to educate, inform, and connect you to resources that are going to make a difference as you develop your own aging plan. And what's an aging plan, you ask? Well, that's a plan that's going to help you navigate your senior years so you can enjoy life to your fullest. We in Florida, we get this term, they call it a hurricane plan. It doesn't mean anybody wants a hurricane. They just want a plan, so they've already thought through how they're going to navigate their way through a storm. And that's the same idea we talk about an aging plan. And there's 7 components that we talk about in the aging plan. And everybody needs to have their own individual plan because it's kind of depends on the things that are A, important to us, and B, the particulars of our situation. Some people have to focus on certain things. Other people have a little bit more freedom to focus on other things. The important thing is planning ahead gives you a lot of benefits. And one of the elements in the aging plan that I'm so excited we're going to get to talk about today is senior living options. And this is an important topic to talk about. You may be perfectly comfortable, happy, you love your home like most of us. Home is where your heart is and all that. But have you considered what if it's not going to be practical at some point to live at home? What are all those questions made? Maybe it's a trip to the hospital that requires, like, it's maybe not quite safe to stay at home anymore. Maybe it's the fact that you're the adult kids and mom and dad aren't able to manage things as well as they did at one time. And now the scramble begins. How do we keep mom and dad safe, or aunt or uncle or whoever it is? And so there's so many resources that are available. But if you're like us, you might be a subject matter expert in the work that you do, but now you're confronted with a whole nother reality. And that's why one of the things that we always say in helping seniors is make sure that you don't try to go this on your own. This is what Rese Garson, our guest today with Assisted Living Locators, is all about. Hey, Rese, how are you?
Hi, Kerry. Great. Thank you for having me.
You know, I was asking you before we were rolling on the camera, I said, I don't know that people know that such a service actually exists, that they can get help to figure out when they're hitting those crossroads, what's going to be best for. Maybe it's yourself and you're concerned about a spouse. Maybe it's just yourself, or maybe it's the adult kids trying to figure out how this is going to work, because clearly what we're doing isn't enough.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that. So there's a lot to navigate, and a lot of people don't know that there are senior placement agents out there. And that's what we do. We are here, we are local, and we're in communities to help the families and the seniors tour places and navigate for this important transition, helping them from the beginning to end.
You know, I think that's a key factor in this, is because we talked about the fact that so often, it shouldn't be this way, but so often you guys get called in when there's been, let's just call it an incident. You know, mom or dad or aunt or uncle is in a hospital. Now it's been deemed that the status quo isn't going to work. It's not going to be safe for them to come home in those environments. And a lot of times you guys get put really under a lot of pressure to try to seek out the best of all possible worlds given those constraints.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, that is the common factor, right? An incident or event happens, they end up in the hospital, leads them to skilled nursing. And at that point, you know, they are done with skilled nursing. You know, skilled nursing won't keep them so long. And once they graduate from there, they may return home or they may not be able to return home. And often enough, it's the fact that they can't return home and then they need something right now.
So what I really wanted to ask you about is, like, when families come to you in crisis, it puts everybody under a lot of pressure to try to find a scenario that works. How do you sit down with a family and begin to work through, because they're starting from scratch. This is all news to them. It's not, you understand all the decisions that have to be made, but how do you sit down with that family and start talking to them about this?
So I'm brought in either by the family or by the case manager, and I sit and assess them first of all. So it does begin with that assessment, finding out what they can do on their own, what they need help with, and how much help. So we do have a list of activities of daily living that kind of give us that guide. And whether it's, needs assistance with dressing, bathing, grooming, toileting, eating, all of these things, med management, these are all factors that come into play. So, a good assessment is looking at each. Can they stand up? Can they walk? What device do they use? Can they transition from one bed to another chair, to the toilet, whatever it may be? Knowing these needs, we then talk to the family to say, okay, so here are your options. Here are here's what we see, and here are some good places. Before we get too far, though, we also find out, where do you want to be? What is your budget? What are your preferences? What activities do you like to do? And I mean, that's pretty much it. Finding out what they can afford, where they want to be, and what they like to do.
It's really a lot to digest in a short period of time when the clock is ticking and you've got to figure out what that solution is. And so I guess probably in this day and age, a lot of people, like we all do, we start, looking stuff up on the internet and trying to figure stuff out. I always advocate that it's always good to educate yourself, but you have to be real careful, because rule number one about the internet is everything you read on it is true, right? And then the second part of it, though, is that it's really quite easy to become more confused after a few internet searches than when you started. Because when you type in what you think you're looking for, first of all, when you're not the subject matter expert, you don't know even the right questions to ask, so you don't even know if you're getting the best search results, which is one of the reasons why in the Helping Seniors world, we always talk about it's so important to get in touch with somebody who knows what the area that we're trying to talk about is. One of the things that makes what you do so important is you have this amazing background personally yourself. You've been in the medical side of things. Interesting enough, we're going to talk about this in a minute, you've been in the hospitality side of things. But then what makes it the perfect trifecta is the fact that you yourself have lived through this. In fact, I was asking you how you got into the business, and you said, in our own family, we had to try to navigate this on our own, which as we tried to learn how to do that, we said we could really find a way to help other folks.
Absolutely. So, yes, all of these things do come into play when working with seniors and patients as a whole. So I worked in the healthcare industry for 10 years, worked in hyperbaric medicine, and in that you have multiple departments involved in that process. So, when the patients come into the door, registering, having labs done, having wound care done, and then coming to us, I help them from the moment they get through that door to the treatment and then walking them out. And that's what they love. They love that personal service. And we had a lot of snowbirds, right? We had a lot of people who came down for these treatments because it could be 3 to 6 months at a time. And because we provide that personalized service, they would wait to come to us, and they really appreciated it. The whole family appreciated it. So really it's the same thing for this. So yes, working in hyperbaric medicine in the hospital for 10 years, working with patients. I, got my EMS license because we're working in the acute care industry as well. I got my master's in health administration because I love that field and enjoy working with patients. And then because an incident like this happened close to our hearts, my mother-in-law, the need was there. We helped navigate this system the hard way, like most of you do. And, moving her from New York down to where we were, trying the home because she was very independent, didn't want to lose that independence, but with the cameras and having a single-story home, making it easy to navigate, that kept her comfortable for another year until another fall event happened. When that happened, we had to look at some more resources. She stayed with us for a bit, and then more care needs mounted. So with that, really the best care for her was going to an assisted living community, because you have the care team there 24/7. You have the life alerts, which she had at home too. And with the cameras, we were able to help EMS navigate their way to the house. but really having that response time does matter. So being in a place where you can have those response needs met immediately, that makes a huge difference in your recovery process.
You know, one of the things I want to point out, I thought with all your significant experience in the medical world, it's interesting because even then when you're faced with this now in your own family, to find the resources to get the right information, to make that right place for mom, as it were, is so important. And the fact that just the difficulty you had with all the connections and experience you had to figure that out really helped you see that it was important to help other people who navigate, who maybe don't even have any of that kind of background, to even understand the right questions to ask.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that because, like you mentioned earlier, there are so many different communities and there is some place out there for everyone. Yeah. Some are big, some are small. We have, bigger communities that have their very active seniors, lots of activities in-house, outside. A lot of them still have their own vehicles, but they do have the care on the premises to truly age in place if they want to go that route. You have others that are homes and outfitted for seniors, and that makes it easier for seniors to navigate. So for some with a little bit more dementia or some visual disturbances, it helps them to navigate around the home and still have that care 24/7 and that personalized service. So it doesn't come down to what I like or what I need. It comes down to what each individual wants and needs. And that's why it's so important to tour the communities. So we work with everyone and we help them tour, help point out, the differences. And as their advocate, we know what their care needs are. We can ask questions on their behalf when they forget to ask, because it does get so overwhelming.
That was a point I wanted to bring up. We were also talking before the show. I think I heard a statistic. You can correct me if I'm not getting this even near right. But I heard in Brevard County, Florida, we're here on the Space Coast, that I heard in our county alone, there's more than 140 different senior living options available. That's a huge number if you're going to start to pare it down. Maybe you can break some of it down by geography, but I was thinking that's a huge number just if you're trying to start to figure out what's the right place.
Yes, it is a huge number. In our territory alone, and we know we serve 4 different counties, but in ours alone, it's just under 300.
Wow. So think about that, because when you're thinking about that place that would be the right next chapter for living safely, here's the thing I was telling you, I didn't really realize until not so long ago. We'll occasionally see an ad, that talks about senior living, and we'll understand that kind of what I would call resort style senior living exists. Did not even know that there was such a thing as a small group home, which could be very cost effective and could be very home-like just because of the definition of what it is. But I guess you don't know those things until you're close to it and starting to really examine all of that.
Absolutely. And even at that, you don't really know about those things until you reach out to your local placement agents. Yeah. So, sometimes, you hear about places that are near where mom or dad are or some other family members, and you think, okay, especially for the family who live abroad, or wherever they are, but not, those who are not local, they will look online and say, okay, well, let's go ahead and look up these communities around mom or dad, to make it easy, right? Because they have their friends there. We want to keep it simple in this whole transition process. So looking online, a lot of times you think you're looking at the community, and then you click on that community and you think you're looking for more information, and it says, very simple stuff, what's your name? Give us some basic contact information, not realizing it's not the community at all. It's another service, an international service, and they don't have anyone local in your area to take them by the hand, tour them the places, be an advocate, and ask questions on their behalf. And they kind of get stuck in the system. It's really no different than ripping a page out of a phone book and saying, here you go, good luck.
I really am so glad you brought that up, because I thought, one of the things that happens is in the day of us pulling out our phone and trying to do a search, or our computer and try to do a search, first of all, we have to know what we're looking for. But then the second thing, and we talk about this so much in the helping seniors world, we say don't try this on your own, which means you need to be smart enough to get the help in those areas. Talk to an expert. They will save you time. They will save you money. And in your case, there's no charge to the family.
That's right.
There's no reason to not reach out to you. But a mistake that happens a lot of times is somebody would see an ad on TV and they'll call an 800 number, or like you were describing, they'll click through something and they'll wind up with some out of town agency, because when you're on that 800 number, you're talking to a call center in Des Moines, Iowa or something. Or when you're clicking through, you're talking to some agency that may be on the West Coast for all that matter. And they don't really have anybody that's local. So one of the things we talk about so often, Rese, is that you need to find the help that you need from your neighbors. Somebody that is right here in the community with you, somebody that is able to distinguish what's going on locally. If you're sitting in Iowa or Nebraska, wherever the call center is, you don't know what's happening on the ground here. Right. Whereas you personally are going in, you know the personalities, assisted livings. You honestly know which ones are great, which ones are improving, which ones you'd probably steer a different direction until they get it all together.
Right.
That's so valuable, because I guess maybe the worst thing would happen is you get mom into a place and it's not right. Now you've got to disrupt everything all over again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a lot of families don't know how to begin this process. So, when you don't know who to reach out to, like I said, the community resources, we are all part of a big community family, right? So we're all connected in the sense that, we say it takes a village to raise kids. It takes a village to support our seniors too. So we have all the different components. You have home health, home care, real estate agents, your attorneys, and, financial planners, your care, your advocates, and of course your senior placement. So because a lot of people don't know we exist, okay, so how do we find you? Where do we find you? And that's where working with you, helping seniors of Brevard, is huge, because you are here for the community. Yeah. You are a community resource. And a lot of our seniors come into these communities saying, well, here I am. I'm here. I need resources. How do we get these resources? And then, like yours, you say, okay, Joe's Senior Resource Center, here's everyone in one big house. You have everything, your real estate, your home care, home health, the entire team, your nurse practitioners, your advocates, your guardians, everything.
And that's the point. It's like, who do you know in that business when you need that help? And that's what's so important, because I really want to warn people about the dangers of the internet, because there's something that most people don't know is sometimes when you're just submitting your name and your phone number and you're just trying to get some information online, what happens is if these companies are sending in, they are claiming you as their contact. So when you go to an assisted living, you can't, you're already been claimed by one of these internet agencies, or that 800 number you saw on TV, and you're missing the benefit of being able to work with somebody who has the skills, but also the local boots on the ground, ear to the ground, knows what's happening. We've talked about this before. There are ratings that are put together by ACA for places, but even those things you have to be careful with, because if you see like what an organization's rating is, they could have a terrible rating, but it was from a survey last year, and now everything has changed because they knew they had to clean up the place, versus the opposite, where somebody would have this great rating, but then the staff changed because they got a better offer, because they got so you really got to talk to somebody who is there every day. You look across the desk at those executive directors, you're talking to the chefs, you know who has the good food, you know all these things. So people really should take the time to call you and say, help me figure this out,
Absolutely. So that is exactly everything you just said was perfect. So yes, right. So we do see where the deficiencies are, firsthand and online. We do see when those changes occur. We know when people leave, they have a big turnover, what is going on. So having someone local, knowing these things and saying, okay, well, if this is where you want to look, we still show them the places they want to look at, but we will tell them, because we are straightforward, if there are deficiencies, we'll let you know. And that's why using us, and other placement agents is beneficial versus online, because we do, like you said, know what's going on. And as far as food and everything else goes, that is a personal preference. So That's also why it's important to work with your local placement agents to bring you to these places, to tour with you, to, one, keep notes, see what each person likes, what they don't like, try the food, because that is very subjective to the individual. So when you work with someone who's on the internet and not local, you don't have that. So you don't have anyone guiding you through this process. It's like I said, like taking a page out of a phone book and saying, here you go.
Yeah, and then all those things that come into play where as you get to know the personality of the person that we're trying to help get placed, you understand they're going to do best in this kind of environment. Maybe,
Right.
could be talking about memory care environment. We could be talking about, like we mentioned, small group home. We could talk about, like, I want a really active community. I mean, you're able to match what somebody is believing is going to be correct for them with the best possible fit here locally.
Absolutely. So based on their geographical preference, their budget, their medical needs, their lifestyle preferences, we find out all of that, and then we pare down. We use that to zoom in to see where they really want to be, what fits them, and then we tour those areas.
We were talking before. I think one of the things that makes you so special in this category is not only do you have a medical background of having been intricately involved in working with seniors along the way on that side, so you have that understanding. But then you and your husband, Graham, you both also have hospitality industry, so you also know the things to look for that are going to make the right kind of assisted living home work, because you understand how that part of it fits in the equation too, the activities.
Absolutely, because a lot of seniors, for those who are facing dementia or have some cognitive issues, activities are huge. That's what fires those neurons. That's what keeps you going and makes more connections. So having those activities, not just from that aspect, but also being social. People want to have friendships and have these relationships so that they can, keep going. When you're at your home alone, it's easy to withdraw. You withdraw from friends, you withdraw from activities and from family. And then you're really just occupying one small space in your home alone. When you're in these places, you age with a whole group of friends.
Can I say that? Because I literally have watched several times, a family say, well, this person, they just like to sit home and watch TV. That's where they're comfortable. And something happens where now they must make the move to the assisted living. And they go from being this sedentary, stuck in my chair, just watching TV all day. They're getting good nutrition. They're getting the medications. Everything is happening like it should. And the person just gets like a new lease on life. I guess you see that all the time.
Absolutely. They come out of the shell. It takes a little bit. Everyone goes through a different, transition period.
Yeah.
So it is up to the individual. But a lot of these communities, one, I go back and I visit them and make sure everything is comfortable. Two, a lot of the communities have an ambassador. So someone who takes them by the hand and says, hey, let's, what do you like to do? And of course, we find out in the beginning and let them know what they like to do as well. But they will introduce them to others and take them to dinner and take them to lunch. And they'll do that till they get acclimated. And most often they have their new friends and they are more social. They may, maybe they never did bingo before, but then after meeting up with these people, they're like, yeah,
This should be fun.
let's go play some bingo.
There's a whole other part that I want to just make sure that people understand is, you really are an advocate for the families that you help, because I was asking you before, well, suppose the end of the conversation is they're planning ahead, they're getting a chance to talk to you, and there's plenty of time, no decision has to be made today. But you're even a great resource on helping people figure out, well, maybe for the next time, mom's going to stay at home or dad's going to stay at home, but we need some help. And you have the expertise to know who's the right people to call. So that it's like you just get everything kind of like, you have a friend in the business and a friend who's really competent in the business.
Absolutely. So we are all pieces of the puzzle, of the bigger puzzle, right? So because there are so many parts to navigate, we align them with home health, with home care, with our hospice, whatever their needs are, we align them with those resources. They should have options. And, we try to make this whole process as smooth and simple as possible.
Well said. Rese Garson with Assisted Living Locators. If somebody is going to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get the process started? You're very generous with your time. You encourage people to speak to you well before there's a need.
Yes. Thank you. The best way is to call 321-367-3520.
All right, I'll have you say that one more time.
321-367-3520.
And it costs nothing to give a call and just sit down and say, here's where we're at. We're looking at this 6 months out. We're looking at this, we're just trying to decide where we're going to go. And I think that's so important in the aging plan conversation is to do this when it's not an emergency. And I think that's like typically was going to give the best outcomes. You're going to work hard no matter what the situation is, but that's always going to be the case. You're looking for the best outcome.
Absolutely. So the earlier you can act, the better. So what I say is grab a group of your friends and, help each other out. Let's just make a day of it. Let's go see a few properties, a few communities, and just for the fun of it, to see, what they're like, sample some food, and take it from there. At least this way, you know your options, you're well informed to make decisions, not just for you, but maybe for your friends or a loved one going ahead.
Well said. Well, that's the time we have for today's edition of Helping Seniors TV. Thank you, Rese Garson with Assisted Living Locators for joining us, and we'll see you on the next edition of Helping Seniors TV.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.